Ajay bhai, are you online?
And good morning and namaste everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective, and it is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, and we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. Hindu Pact is an initiative of World Council of America. And with me, as always, is our co-host, and it's our main host, I guess, is Utsav Chakravarti. Utsoda is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America and convener of Hindu Pact. And we, as Utsoda, I want to welcome you to the show. We meet every week at 11 o'clock Eastern, and we talk about contemporary American issues. And today we have this issue that we are going to talk about, which is, uh, you know, almost like a deja vu all over again. We are going to talk about yet another month, another Hindu-phobic conference. And before I introduce the conference and before I talk about it, I want to I want to give Utsada an opportunity to welcome everyone and give a few opening remarks. Utsada, over to you. Utsada, you may be on mute.
Thank you, Ajay bhai.
Yeah.
And yes, this is our 91st Hindu Lounge. And, as always, we come to you with our take on events affecting American Hindu communities and Hindus around the world. And yeah, today we are going to talk about another anti Hindu event that is being targeted not just against Hindus in America, but against Hindus in India as well as the country of India as well. So we'll go into deep and we'll see what we can dig out of it. Ajay bhai, back to you.
All right, Utsada. So this is the conference that we are going to talk about. It is called India on the Brink. Now, so what does it mean when someone says India on the brink? So let me first, show you a little bit of what India on the brink is all about. I do have, without giving too much publicity, but there's some contextual information that I want to share with everyone on India on the brink. So this is supposedly a global conference. It is online. It's virtual conference, and these are the people who have no good of India in mind, actually. And they talk about, if you look at the list of what they're trying to accomplish, and what their goal is not to come together and figure out. Every society has its flaws, every society has its positives, but generally people who want to improve a particular country don't use alarmist statements like India is on the brink and India is going to break up and all that. They usually talk about how to make India a better place for everyone. But here is the agenda driven conference, and they talk about human rights abuses, and they talk primarily the human rights perspective from a particular angle, which is that India itself is not really a country. They don't believe that India is a nation. They don't believe India has a right to exist. They come from the angle that India is a political entity, and that political entity is ripe for a breakup if we make enough noises within India and outside of India. So they talk about the human right abuses in India against religious minorities in a country, Utsoda, dare I say, which has probably more rights for minorities than any other democracy that I can imagine, including special laws and special education institution, rights to run education institutions the way they want it, right to the religious institution and complete control over the finances. And Hindus, as majorities, don't have any of that, and they call these religious as religious minorities, and then they want to swell the numbers, so they add other marginalized communities. And now they talk about the Christians being under attack in India, where we know that there is
No,
a
no,
rampant
hold on.
conversion
They
that is
don't
going on.
hold on. They
So
don't add marginalized communities. They manufacture
they
marginalized
manufacture
communities
marginalized community.
and then add them to the
So
list.
and yeah, and then so that they want to basically go now out of India, and they want to build this narrative that, look, India is falling apart, India is falling apart, India is there is a genocide that is waiting to happen in India. There's genocide that's waiting to happen in India, in a country of 1.5 billion people. There's absolutely no sign of any genocide happening. There's absolutely there's no evidence that a genocide is coming. And these are the people, because they have so much hatred for Hindus, so much hatred for India, that they want to propagate this myth that India is at a brink, India is falling apart. All the minorities in India, 200 million of them, are going to be massacred somehow. And who are the people behind it, Utsoda? So, for example, one of the organizations behind it is Justice for All. And Justice for All is an organization that wants to break India. They are actively advocating that Kashmir, be given, be separated for India. Now, these are the kinds of people who are behind, and a whole bunch of them, 50 speakers. So that we are going to talk about them, right?
We will, and we will get into the details of who these people are and who are behind these people. And, we should look at it from the perspective of which are the groups and individuals who are driving this, and which are the groups and individuals that are enabling this. So we need to kind of draw a distinguishing a line between these two, because what I am seeing in many of the interactions that our community, Hindu American community, is doing, or in general the critique that is coming against this kind of breaking India efforts, is that there is a bunch of 100 people doing something. But the trick is to understand which how many of those 100 people are actually the ones driving this, and how many of those 100 people are actually enabling this. There is a slight distinction between the two. One is the commanding end of it, the other is the execution end of it. We need to see the distinction between them and understand them, to understand what is happening and how it is happening.
Right. So that I so walk us through. Uh, so we said that in this particular show, we are going to walk people through some of the people who are the organizers of of this particular conference. And I mentioned one to just get us started, which is an organization called Justice for All. This is the organization that advocates for some of the people who are in prison for for the acts of violence, act of terrorism. They want those people to be released from the jail. They want a referendum in Kashmir, which is a euphemism to for advocating for separating Kashmir from India, because in reality, the Constituent Assembly, the representative of people, already voted decades ago in the 1950s to remain with India. In fact, all of Kashmir, but this Justice for All is one organization. The Indian American Muslim Council, IMAC, is another such organization, which is
It's
also
IAMC. IAMC.
IAMC. Sorry, I misspoke. IAMC, Indian American Muslim Council, is another organization which is behind it. But we have talked about some of these organizations, but there are a lot of individuals as well who are behind this, right? Um, so tell us about them.
So if you put the visual on for the
Yeah,
yes.
you're sharing
So,
your slides with Soda, so go ahead.
yes. So I will
You may
go
want to
into the.
zoom in because it's somewhat difficult to read
It's
with so
okay.
many
It's okay because
big
it's not.
references.
It's a material for our conversation, and
Okay.
I want people to understand, and because we are primarily a listening show, uh, we I want people to understand what are the groups behind this and who are the individuals leading this, and draw your own conclusion. So, in the order of involvement in organizing this and being the main drivers, we have the names. So the first one would be the one who is actually the brains behind it, or actually representing the brains behind it. And as we go down the list, you will see that we are moving from the nerve center to the brains of this anti-Hindu, anti-Indian effort, to the hands and legs executors of this anti-India effort, in that order as we proceed forward. So we start with Hatem Bazian. Hatem Bazian is at the brain end of it, that is visible. I'm pretty sure there are a bunch of people who are not visible, who obviously won't come out at the front end and be hosting it or speaking at the event. But he's the most visible end of the command side. So Hatem Bazian is a senior lecturer at the Near Eastern Ethnic Studies at UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. A very pro-Islamist friendly environment because of the strong presence of the neo-left in America in that campus. He is a long time hater of Israel. He's a anti-Semite. Is known to be an anti-Semite for a long time. He has been a driver within University of California system, the BDS movement, the movement to take money away from Israel and boycott Israel, and bring it's a very anti-Semitic movement. Even the mainstream American political parties, in a bipartisan manner, consider BDS movement to be anti-Semitic. So Hatem Bazian is a key promoter and a driver of that in University of California system. Uh, and I have, if you see my screen, I have put the relevant links also, so that in case people who are listening to this or watching this should not think that I'm just making this up. Everything I'm saying, we have reference material in mainstream media or in archive files from mainstream media that we are referring to when we are making these accusations and these allegations against these individuals that we are going to be talking about. So BDS movement, very, very strongly connected. He's formerly the former executive board member of the United States Student Association, former head of UC Berkeley campus Muslim Students Association, which is a very, very dangerous organization, as you must have seen in the past. MSA has been associated with pro Hamas groups, with Jamaat Islami, Muslim Brotherhood groups. Very toxic. We have talked about MSA in the past. Um, Again, a very anti-Semitic group, primarily used to be focusing on Jews and targeting Jews, but now moving away towards targeting Hindus and India. Uh, so because of the players who are behind it, co-founder of Students for Justice for Palestine, founder director of the study of and documentation of Islamophobia. Now, this whole thing about Islamophobia is a cover for running these agendas that they're doing. They're running geopolitical agendas and using the word Islamophobia as a cover, because then you cannot talk against them. The moment you expose them, you will be called a Islamophobe. And in America, that's it's a very smart move from their side. So, as a key leader of the BDS movement, Hatem Bazian uh, has been actually supporting Hamas, providing funding assistance to Hamas, and in the past they have been linked to Holy Land Foundation, which the U.S. Treasury Department actually banned as a supporter of terrorist organization after September 11. Uh, Again, this is something that he has been very open about. These are information that are in public space, so you can take a look at it. And as you can see, we are also sharing it on the screen based on actual information that we have. Very close connection to Muslim Brotherhood. So you will see this stream of connection visible as we go through this program. uh, you will see the role of Muslim Brotherhood in it, as Ajay Bhai pointed out. In the past, he called out Justice for All. He called out Indian American Muslim Council. Both these organizations maintain very close link with Muslim Brotherhood linked groups or their Asian counterpart, which is Jamaat Islami. Uh, Very strong connection. Justice for All is a movement that is led by an individual named Malik Mujahid. He's a Pakistani guy, uh, and he runs these Muslim causes where wherever America is involved in a geopolitical intervention, whether in Uyghur, whether it is in Myanmar, he gets involved and he draws in money from all the sources he can using these geopolitical uh, you know agenda items, and then redirects it towards India and Hindus. So he would become the chair of the Burma Task Force. He would become the chair of the Save Uyghur campaign. And then in the action items, he would be targeting it towards Kashmir. He will be doing some lip service on Uyghurs and Myanmar and all these things. But so, as a Pakistani Muslim leading this Muslim Brotherhood linked group, it's a very smart tactics that Abdul Malik Mujahid has taken up, and you can see that you know he's he and Hatem Bazian both show the link between Muslim Brotherhood and this move and this event. Next person, Ajay Bhai, I will go to. Do you have any thoughts on this, or I can
No,
go?
no, no. Please go. I think this was very good analysis. I think people ought to know because these are the names that people generally hear, but they don't connect the dots. And these people occupy very high, academic positions, and that is why they gain certain amount of credibility in their own circle, and then that is projected out. Because once an academic, person publishes paper, writes a book, then mainstream media kind of picks it up and it gets propagated in mainstream media. And if you say this lie enough number of times, all of a sudden it becomes truth. So if you keep repeating relentlessly that there is a genocide that is coming in India, at some point people will start believing, although there is no ground reality that correlates to genocide happening in India, anywhere in India. So I think uh, these are the people who we need to expose, because they occupy high academic offices or professorships, and they use that pulpit to propagate Hindu hatred.
That's correct. That's correct. And another thing that you will see is that when you keep repeating it again and again, again and again, there is a genocide coming, there is a genocide coming, you seed people's minds to commit acts of violence at a limited scale in the beginning, and then hopefully you manifest it. You manifest violence, you manifest discord. So if you keep telling, for example, as a part of a psychological effort, if you keep telling Americans there is going to be riots between X group and Y group, there's going to be riots, you keep building it up, repeating it, and keep feeding information to say that it will be happening, then eventually elements within those individual groups start acting upon it and manifest that violence. They may not turn into what you want it to be, but you still get something out of it. And that's part of a psychological warfare tactic that has been used for a long period of time, especially with the spread of mass media outlets. Since the time of the radio, this has been applied, but now with social media, it can be amplified
It's
much
amplified.
faster.
So,
Yeah.
what about Yvonne Ridley?
So the next person I would like to talk about, again, remember the names I'm going out with, taking up first, are the names that are the brain end and the command end of the India on the Brink event that's being organized. The names that will come later are the execution ends. So just a reminder of that. So we had Hatem Bazian, who is a professor and anti-Semite at UC Berkeley, connected to Hamas BDS movement. That was the first one. The next person is a British journalist named Yvonne Ridley. So she started
I
a
think
political.
it goes by Yvonne Ridley, probably.
Yeah, Ridley. So this is interesting. She was actually a reporter for the British media in Afghanistan, and she was captured by the Taliban in 2001. And there she was under Taliban captivity, and she was worked on, and she eventually, suffering Stockholm syndrome, converted to Islam, and she became one of the strongest supporters of Taliban thereafter. So she was under Taliban, in prison, and this is something that has happened a lot in the past. It's a psychological phenomenon called the Stockholm syndrome. So Ridley, once she was eventually released after she converted to Islam, and she actually is one of the biggest promoters of hijab in the world, and she later on became, because she's a British woman, one of the most influential persons in the Muslim community. And she married 5 times, and every time she got married, she would try to promote Islam to the person she's going to get married to, and try to get them citizenship in Western countries. So these are some of her backgrounds, and she keeps bringing in, it's almost her life's mission to do promote jihad, and it's now her life's mission to promote Islam. So she comes from that perspective, and because she comes from she's a white woman who converted to Islam, she's an asset to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamists consider, they support her. I'm sure they give her a lot of money. I don't know. I cannot say for sure, but they build her up as a personality, and now she's one of the think tanks in the Muslim Brotherhood uh, uh, network, and she also is one of the prime supporters of Afia Siddiqui, the Al Qaeda scientist in America, who is in prison because she was trying to really target America, and trying to acquire weapons of mass destruction. So Afia Siddiqui is one of the primary supporters early on of releasing Afia Siddiqui, who is Al Qaeda, going through imprisonment in America, was Yvonne Ridley. So she's one of the speakers at this event. Uh, I am saying these things for everybody's information, because people will focus on individuals like Indian leftists, and people like Akar Patel, people like you'll see the names. We'll talk about them later. Those are common names because they show up in a protest in JNU. They'll show up in some other protest, and people identify them. People know that they are anti-Hindu. They are anti-India. They will take positions that hurt India as a country, and they know them. But these are the people that they don't know about much, and it is important to know who these people are, because these are the people who are making the other end succeed, or feel like they're succeeding.
It's difficult to know who's using who here, so that the interest converge so closely
Yeah, that is
that
true.
they're both kind of using each other, right? At least
I'm pretty
that would
sure
be
that's
my
how both
thinking.
sides thinks. I'm sure that's how both sides thinks, and their interests do converge. But you have to understand, the way I look at it is, and you can disagree with me on that, is that one end has no skin in the game. The other end has a skin in the game. So the people who are executing it are people within India. They have a skin in the game. They will benefit from the advantages that will come out of it. The people who are commanding this are doing this out of a larger geopolitical agenda that I described in the beginning.
Although a lot of these people are not in India, right? A lot of the people who
They
are
are not, no, they
anti-Hindu
are, the
are not in
command end of
India.
it is not in India, because if they are in India,
They have Hindu sounding name. They are not in India. Some of them are probably not even, are actually not. We know that they're not even born in India, but they hold this vehement anti-India, anti-Hindu ideology in their heart, and that is what manifests here. So I think there's a great convergence in interest, and both I agree with you. Both sides think that they're driving each other, and maybe to some extent that is true. To the other extent, I think, yeah, I mean, at any given time, one group has upper hand over the other group.
Not necessarily. I still believe that the command end of this, the Muslim Brotherhood end of this, has the upper hand in terms of driving the agenda over the other end. Uh, the other end that actually has a strong identity of its own usually doesn't want to associate with this Muslim Brotherhood end. I'll tell you the reason why. Because there are a lot of people in India that are anti-Hindu. There are a lot of people in India that are anti-Hindutva. Uh, Not very different in terms of the two things. Uh, there are a lot of people in India who oppose the India as a country, but they are not really associating sometimes with these groups because they feel like they can voice themselves uh, in their independent position, and that I think is okay. Uh, this group that you see, the names that is associated with the India on the Brink website and the India on the Brink event, this group is a group that doesn't see anything to do with the well-being of India. They really associate with the other side, and they will take all the benefits they can get from the Muslim Brotherhood side. So I would give primary example of that would be Rana Ayub, but that's for another time, another
Yeah,
day.
let me talk a little bit about Rakib Hamid Saeed, who is next on your list. If you can go to this picture, I'll just quickly show the visual, and then I'll talk about him because I did talk to him actually. If you go to the next slide,
There you go. You
so
can
so
you
the
can Yeah.
so Rajib Hamid, I said Rakib, sorry, Rakib Hamid Naik is a journalist from the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, and he's a reporter of Al Jazeera. He called me actually, and he talked to me about the funds that were that a lot of the organizations legitimately received for COVID relief. And we talked about the funds that World Hindu Council of America, or VHP, received, which was about $18,000, and we provided documentation and other things, and we received another thing as a loan, and we provided enough documentation, and actually we have started making payments back on that loan. Every month we are paying that loan back because we met certain criteria that were laid out by the government, so for the grant and for the loans. And I explained the whole thing. I provided him documentary evidence, and yet he went and wrote uh, an article which almost implied that we fraudulently, acquired the money from the government, and we are going to make it to a use that is not intended, and all that. Now, despite of providing all the relevant information, despite of talking to him multiple times, he wrote what he wanted to write, regardless of what the facts were. Now, to the credit of some of the Hindu organizations, they've actually taken the news organization Al Jazeera to court, and they are being sued now. And this is the person who has absolutely no credibility because he actually goes out and distorts fact. Now, as I said, the loan amount that we received, we actually have been making payments on that loan. So it is a long term loan, and we, true to loan, we are making payments. So it is no question of getting the money and using it for nefarious purposes or any of that. There's enough documentary evidence, and this guy just sits and manufactures reality in his own mind, and that is why he's being sued. Now let's see what comes out. I think that the result of that lawsuit will be a lesson for him and his news organization.
Well, Ajay, the thing is, the Al Jazeera already withdrew the article that he wrote
Yeah,
right away the moment Hindu American Foundation put the lawsuit on them.
yeah.
So that's one visible outcome of the lawsuit, and I think there is going to be more to come. But to see this guy actually be at this event shows and again he's connected to Indian American Muslim Council, IAMC, and it's again the reason I put this guy in the top three is because he's the front end of the Muslim Brotherhood linked command structure. He's a young guy, so he's probably has a long way to go. But he's he is at that end. He's at the end where they're planning stuff, and you know, Al Jazeera is an organization that has all the stamps of Qatar supported networks that Muslim Brotherhoods are connected with. And it's a media organization that is openly associates itself with Muslim Brotherhood. It was actually banned in the United States. It's banned in UAE. It's banned in it's banned in Israel. So that's the thing that Al Jazeera does. And this guy, even Al Jazeera was unhappy and removed his article because he's more toxic than what Al Jazeera can handle at this point. So that tells you where this is coming from. Ajay bhai.
So that tell me a little bit about Angana Chatterjee, the next person on your list.
Okay, so I'll talk about Angana Chatterjee first, and then talk about the other person you see on the view, which is Avinash Kumar. Or you can talk about Avinash Kumar. But the reason I'm going to talk about Angana Chatterjee first is because her links are exposed.
I thought you were going to talk about it first because she shares your last name.
No, she doesn't. I'm Chakrabarti. She's Chatterjee.
I'm close enough. I was
No,
just
no.
joking.
That is the kind of thing that gets you in trouble, Ajay bhai.
I was just passing. I look. I was showing by example. So that there was a reason why I said that. This
Okay.
is the kind of correlation and connection that the people who are on the opposite side always make. They have no regard for truth. They just connect the two things that are that they want to connect without respect for reality or honesty or truth. And I just wanted to make that case by giving a somewhat of provocative example to see how you would react to that. But you should not be surprised if you see that in a paper and then somebody retracts after a few days saying that, oh, it was just a mistake we made in connecting the two. So
Right.
I brought it up for a reason. But go ahead.
Okay. So, so Angana Chatterjee is the reason we are going to discuss her next is because her links are exposed. She received money from a convicted Pakistani spy, Ghulam Nabi Fai, uh, back in early 2000s. She's a regular. Like, her career is based on promoting anything that takes in that that is breaking India. She comes at it from, she started off as a Maoist supporter of Maoists, but then when Maoist movement was faltering, she moved into supporting Islamists because that's where the money is more in, especially in the West. So she worked, and I'm saying this accusation with money clearly because she is there is documentation of her receiving money from ISI as agent and spy, convicted ISI agent and spy Ghulam Nabi Fai. So here I'm going to make the accusation of her receiving money from Islamists very, very openly. Uh, so, that's her background. She's just carrying on with her career. She hates, for all intents and purposes, she doesn't want to see India exist, and she uses platforms that are offered to her using power and money. Uh, Again, another individual from University of California at Berkeley. Uh, Remember Hatem Bazian? So no. So she has moved away from
Oh,
Ghulam Nabi
she's
Fai.
at a UC kind of affiliated with UC Berkeley, not directly with UC
Correct,
Berkeley.
correct. It's a non, yeah, it's a non-profit that is associated with UC Berkeley.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, the point here is that she has an experience working in that ecosystem. Uh, she moved from Pakistan funded anti-Hindu, anti-India narrative to Muslim Brotherhood funded anti-India narrative. That is a trend in America right now and in Western world right now. The leadership of the India breaking India efforts, anti-Hindu efforts, have moved from pure Pakistani state control from Islamabad to a more amorphous, globalized Muslim Brotherhood control, very ably associated and enabled by the neo left. That is the trend that is happening in these kinds of anti-Hindu, anti-India efforts, and that is very worrisome, given the situation that we see in the world today. That's for another time, another discussion. So you can talk about Avinash Kumar.
Yeah, so that I think I've mentioned this. I've mentioned this in past, and I'll mention this again. That when I was in college, I wrote some op-ed pieces supporting Amnesty International. I think it was a 3 article series that me and a co-author of mine wrote, and we said why, or maybe 2 article series. I forget, but it's been several years, and we said why Amnesty International is playing is important, and what kind of critical role it is playing in this world. Um, in last several decades, Amnesty International has transformed itself to a very left wing organization, and they have focused, for whatever reason now, and I'm sure you'll elaborate on the reasons. They've focused on the ways which are very detrimental to India and very detrimental to Hindus, and they have no regard for laws of any country. So the reason I say this is because Avinash Kumar, a graduate of JNU with a PhD, was appointed head of Amnesty India and the Amnesty International's India branch. Now, Amnesty International India was for last 20 years under the UPA government and under and the BJP government both. So 20 years they have been uh, so that I hear a little bit of echo somewhere, but so not sure why. But but this Amnesty International was accused of money laundering and total disregard for Foreign Exchange Management Act and the Foreign Contribution Regulations Act, which is the FCRA. Any organization that wants to send money to India, to a non-profit in India, have to send it to an FCRA certified, FCRA licensed, FCRA approved organization. Amnesty International was not. So Amnesty International was basically sending money almost like you would send money in Hawala. So send it money to someone and they give money to whatever, or send money for purpose that is not intended for. And when the Indian government came down on it and implemented the law and canceled their, basically registration in India, Avinash Kumar and his ilk basically, got very upset and started calling India has, no justice, and India government is, India government is against the human rights organizations, and the Indian government wants to hide the genocide, and that's why they are acting against the humanitarian organization called Amnesty International. So basically, they are one of the proponents of this genocide is imminent in India narrative. uh, Amnesty International is, and Avinash Kumar is a head, or former head, I would, because that organization doesn't exist in India, of that organization. And he is coming and speaking at this conference to again further the same narrative that he was that he was that Amnesty was pushing for, and that is genocide is here and we are banned because we were against genocide of minorities, of course. So that you're on mute again.
So again, see, Amnesty is one of those organizations, and Human Rights Watch is another one. So over the last 20 years, Ajay bhai, what has happened is that there is so much globalization of agenda and agenda peddlers that human rights and quote unquote genocide watch is a business now. It is a business that if you want to see who is powerful in this world, one way to measure it is, no, so let me compare it to something else. If you want to see who is, in fashion, in the field of fashion, if you want to see which city has the most influence on fashion, you look at the dress styles that are being popularized, and which direction the style is traveling. Is it traveling from Paris to New York? Is it traveling from New York to Paris? That's how you know who is at any given point of time a controller of fashion agendas. In the field of human rights and geopolitical influence, you have to see which side has the more influence on world order, the ruling elites in the world. You have to see which the human rights organizations are, whose side the human rights organizations are taking, and that's a measure of who has more influence. Kiski lathi in Hindi is kiski lathi badi hai. And obviously, in this case, going by the trend of what you see with Human Rights Watch, what you see with Amnesty International, you will see that the Muslim Brotherhood's lathi is quite big and strong here. So it is a measure of trend. Uh, these organizations themselves don't have a spine, or don't have a they're business people. They're mercenaries. They're humanitarian mercenaries, and they're up with some intellectual biases, with some ideological biases. They're up for the highest bidder. I mean, if you offer something X amount to them hypothetically, and if Islamic groups offer X amount, they will choose Islamic group. But if you really offer them 20X, and the Muslim Brotherhood offers X, then they will think about it. They might introduce some of your talking points into their agenda. That's my understanding of how these people work.
So that let's move on to the next person, and that is Akar Patel. So the
I don't
Akar
want to.
Patel,
I don't want to
Akar
talk about
Patel.
him much.
Yeah, we don't want to talk too much about Akar Patel, but Akar Patel is a person who is based in Bangalore, and uh, he basically is relentless opponent of anything Hindu,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So Akar Patel is one of those guys who, remember, I was telling you right about 5 minutes ago that there are those anti-Hindu, anti-India individuals who stand and take their positions independent of foreign patronage, and who will not associate with the Muslim Brotherhoods and the global jihadist, global ISI linked globalist groups. They will not directly associate with them, and they will still be anti-Hindu, but they will take their independence. Akar Patel is one of those individuals who started off at that place, maybe 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, and gradually moved into the orbit of the Muslim Brotherhood, and is now completely you know, their tool, for lack of a better word. So now we are entering the tool phases. Angana Chatterjee is where the tools started. The execution end of this whole anti-Hindu breaking India effort. Now this is another tool. He is a tool. He will do what they say. He's not one of the brightest bulbs in the room. So when USCIRF wrote the anti-India recommendations last year, he thought, well, he's so dumb. I mean, and this guy was the head of Amnesty International in India for a while.
Before
So
before the before
that
the
Avinash Kumar fellow.
Avinash,
Yeah.
yeah, before
So
Avinash Kumar.
correct. So I mean, this guy is so dumb that I'm using that word very carefully. I really think he's dumb. Uh, that he actually didn't even do the research when USCIRF released the last year's report, and he actually quoted the report from 2020 to say that US government has recommended India to be put in CPC status, and then he corrected it, and he went through this whole, he made a fool of himself. And there are tweets that I have shown here, pasted here, to show that he he his driving emotion is his utter hatred for Hindus. I don't know why, but whatever it is, he just hates Hindus, and I think that's why he does this. uh, I don't think he's that effective. He's a lot of follower and support because he has a Hindu sounding last name, and that you will begin to see from here onwards that Hindu sounding last names become assets in this Muslim Brotherhood global jihadist agenda, because then they make it look, at least to the non discerning eyes in the West, that look, Hindus are with us, therefore we are relevant, and we are mainstream, which they are not. But there are enough Hindus like Akar Patel, there are enough people like Akar Patel with Hindu sounding names who will be helping them going forward.
So that then there is Akashi Bhatt, and the reason I even put Akashi Bhatt here, I just let me show this at least the photo of Akashi Bhatt. I didn't put too much detail because this is Akashi Bhatt. The reason I put Akashi Bhatt on this list, Sada, is because it's a there's a different angle to this, and it's a somewhat personal angle. So I wanted to demonstrate that people are coming here to this conference and speaking for all different reasons. So Akashi Bhatt is a surgeon. She lives in UK, and her father was a superintendent of police in Gujarat during the Godhra incident. Incidentally, Utsada, yesterday was the anniversary of Godhra train burning, where 59 innocent Hindus were burnt alive, women and children, because it was the women and children compartment in the train that was set to fire. And this Akashi Bhatt's father, who was a superintendent of police, during the investigation to curry favor with the Indian central government, uh, gave a testimony and took the side of these, of this, essentially the people who were, who were fabricating uh, the facts so that he can get promotions and other things. Eventually, he was found out and he was prosecuted, and he's now in jail.
So Akashi Bhatt is a very good example of how your personal grievances, personal agenda, personal experience. Her father is a criminal. He was a police officer who committed criminal acts. The court caught him. He's in prison. She, she hates India, and she will do everything to help these enemies. I'm going to use the word enemies because they really want to see India destroyed. So Akashi is a good example of that. There is not much to be said about her yet.
Yeah.
She will eventually get to Akar Patel status, hopefully, on her own, and then we will go to the next.
So she's the person who's driven by personal agenda rather than anything else, and that is a personal agenda to support a convicted liar, convicted in the court of law, right? Um, so the next person is a really interesting guy on this list. Tell us about Ajit Sahi.
Now we are more or less in the execution end of this effort. So the command end is now completely gone.
So
People
who is
like
Ajit Sahi?
so Ajit Sai is a journalist from India. He's now on probably on H1 visa. I don't know what his current status of visa is. He used to be on H1 visa. So he is an example of a guy who's an employee for your destruction. So he's just doing his job.
Who is
His
he
ideas
employed
are,
for?
so exactly. So here is the thing. He is employed for Indian American Muslim Council, an organization that is funded and supported to some extent by Muslim Brotherhood linked groups. Uh, he also here is the trick now. Now because he is a good example of how the extreme neo left in America has started building relationships with uh, Islamist groups. And if you see the diagram here, Quill Foundation is an example of that. And on the left end of it, you see Open Society. Open Society Foundation is George Soros's foundation. So there is an individual named Harsh Mandar who acts is the connection between Quill Foundation and Open Society Foundation, George Soros's foundation. And Ajit Sahi is part of the editorial board member of Quill Foundation and also the advocacy director for Indian American Muslim Council. And Ajit Sai's past is pretty sketchy as well. He was one of the very few journalists in India when thousands of people were dying in India. And we covered this in the previous show. SIMI, Students Islamic Movement for India,
In India
and
or
Indian
in India?
in India and in Hizbul Mujahideen, where not Hizbul, Indian Mujahideen, their armed
The militant wing.
armed branch, were working, and India at that time was not under Modi; it was under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's government. They were struggling every month. Hundreds of people were dying in different cities. Simi was being cornered. They were being caught in these acts, and Ajit Sahi, as a journalist, was helping Simi. He was doing PR on their behalf in India. So that's his background. Obviously, I think the moment Modi came to power, I think his backers, the command end of these efforts, realized that if he stayed in India, he will be eventually exposed for his links with a banned Islamist organization, terrorist organization. So they brought him here with the H1 visa, and he's been in America for the last 5, 6, 6, 7 years, I think. and he's working as the advocacy director for Indian American Muslim Council, very conveniently, very regular in Washington D.C. circles. This is all he does: goes to people, lawmakers, pushes the anti-Hindu, destroy India agenda. That's his role. Another person who is he's at the execution end of things. I don't know what else to say about him.
Now, tell us about Arjun Sethi.
So Arjun Sethi is an American born, like he grew up in America, and he's a Sikh, but he's a Khatri Sikh, and within Khalistan movements, Khatri Sikhs are non-Jat Sikhs are isolated. They don't have any powerful position. So Arjun Sethi is one of the very unique people who was pushed into supporting the Khalistan movement from the Islamist side. So he started his career as a lawyer and an activist and an author, who the Muslim Brotherhood kind of brought up, took under its wings, made him write some books, helped him write some books in support of Islam. And then this was after September 11, where they were, reaching out to building larger intersectional coalitions with Sikh communities, Hindu communities, Christian communities. So Arjun Sethi was one of those activist lawyers, authors who the Muslim Brotherhood picked up, put the winds underneath his wings, made him become a bigger activist, deployed him into Kashmir against India. And he has been active on Kashmir issues with key anti-Hindu, anti-India activists from the Pakistani perspective. And he was also one of the speakers at the testimony at the Tom Lantos Commission hearing after India removed Article 370 and integrated Jammu and Kashmir into India. He was one of the main speakers against India. He goes to events with Ghulam Nabi Fai, Pakistani spy, convicted Pakistani spy. So he's a guy who is pro-Islamist, anti-India person who now has started talking about Khalistan because his handlers probably realized that this guy wears a pagdi. I mean, how long are we going to keep using him for Kashmir and Islamist causes? Let's just help him to promote Khalistani causes. And one of the key times, and I remember this very well, when there was protests in front of the Indian embassy on January 26th, 2020, when the Khalistanis came and the Islamists came, Muslim Brotherhood came, they were standing at both ends, and I still visibly remember this interaction where, from the Muslim Brotherhood side, initially Arjun Sethi was standing with the leader of ICNA in DC area, and talking to him, and then he calls the Muslim Brotherhood guys to come with me, and then he goes and meets the Khalistani protesters, and then they have a conversation. Very metaphorical, diagrammatic presentation of what's happening ideologically and strategically behind the scenes.
So this is an interesting one, right? You would think that after all the atrocities that Kashmiri Hindus have suffered, and they've been rendered homeless. 350,000 of them have left their home, become refugees, primarily in India, but other parts of the world as well. So many people through the decades have been in Kashmiri Hindus have been murdered and raped, and the worst kind of human rights abuses you can think of. And here is a Kashmiri Pandit, Nitasha Kaul, and Nitasha Kaul is on the other side. What gives?
So she's been at that. At the other hand, she has some personal relationships with Kashmiri Islamists in her personal life. Interpersonal relationships. She does subscribe to. She is in World War II there were Nazis who were SS commanders. Who were just 100 miles away from where concentration camps were. So you find this situation in many Hindu communities. Has many people historically who were quote unquote with Hindu names, but they were supporting Islamists. So that's not a new thing. Nitasha has personal affiliations, personal family connection with Islamists. She is an anti-Hindu for all intents and purposes. She has been promoting she's a British. She is in UK, by the way, not in America, and she has been the voice of the separatist, Kashmiri separatists. She is one of those poster girls of, look, even the Kashmiri Pandit who say that they have been genocided, even we have one of their people uh, pushing our agenda. That is the that is where
Unfortunately, she is not the only one, right?
she's not the only one. She's not the only one, but that's the reality of what we live in. This, Ajay bhai, that is what this is what people have to understand. This is a psychological war at in place. I mean, physical war happens in certain times, in extreme conditions, as you say, but around that there is a constant psychological war going on, and we have to understand that we are in those situations, in whether it is Kashmir or any other part of India.
So that this is a person we have talked about quite a bit, Kavita
I don't want to
Krishnan.
talk about her. She's just a
Kavita
tool.
Krishnan is a known Maoist. For people who don't know what Maoist or Naxalite is, that she is the extreme left of Marxist Leninist Maoist movement, which is violent and is responsible for hundreds of deaths in India. And Kavita Krishnamurti is a political face of
Ajay
that
bhai, not
movement.
Kavita Krishnamurti, it's
Oh,
Kavita
sorry, Kavita
Krishnan.
Krishnan.
Ajay bhai, you get the
Kavita
names wrong
Krishnan.
all the time. You got to focus on the names.
I understand. I got too much
Poor
things
Kavita
connecting me.
Krishnamurti, she's a beautiful
Kavita
singer.
Krishnan. Kavita Krishnan is the political face of these Maoists and the Naxalites, and she has been a relentless supporter of all anti-India causes, including take opposition to Kashmir being part of India, for lack of better way of saying it. She was one of the very few Indians who actually came to defend uh, you know, our friend, and who shall go nameless, even after the OFMI exposed him, Peter Frederick. I said it anyway. So, I don't know if there's a lot more to be said about Kavita Krishnan than what I've already said, but so that you and she's very closely associated with Harsh Mandan and Sanjay
Yeah,
Ka,
they're
Karunjati
all
Roy,
yeah,
that the whole gang, right?
they're all it is together. But she's the execution end of things.
Well,
She's the
she's the
person.
political end of it too, because she's actually a formal politician, whereas
Correct,
the other
correct.
people have the academic hat, or some of them have some of them work for these humanitarian human rights organizations. She's actually a politician.
That's correct. And now we are entering those people, that group that masquerades in both spaces. They
Yeah.
will be in, they are just they are invited to make things look legitimate, mainstream. They are the people who will going to tweet, run the agenda, bring out the protest on the street, rally people around, but
So
they are small fries. These are
yeah,
people
they're
who are
small
the
fry. I mean, and in fact, I think the next person is such a small fry that our mentioning her will actually go on a resume, and that's Manvi Atri, based in Bangalore. But there's a reason I picked her, right? This person is, of course, based in Bangalore. She's part of the Union of Civil Liberties, which is a leftist so-called civil rights organization, and she has absolutely no traction in the world. But I figured, why not give her some airtime, because nobody else cares about her, so we'll care about her. We are basically, because Ustada, at the heart of it, we are very caring people, so we care about Manvi Atri not getting attention. The reason, we got to do that for our fellow human beings. The reason I picked her, Utsada, is because she has a different axe to grind. She wants to promote, and her name is Hindu. Apparently she's a Hindu. She says that she's probably Hindu, but she is here promoting conversion to Christianity. And her angle, the reason I picked her is because her angle is that Christians are being persecuted now. Usada, if you know, in last I would say in last 15 years or 20 years, a substantial percentage of Indian population has been converted from Hindu to Christianity, especially if you go to interior parts of Tamil Nadu, in Telangana, in Andhra Pradesh, even in Karnataka. And this person, who's supposedly a lawyer, part of PCLU, People's Civil Liberties Union, comes out and says, firstly, there are no forced conversion that is happening anywhere. Now there is enough evidence that there's forced conversion happening to Christianity by force, definition of conversion, force, fraud, and inducement. So there are, in fact, 2 weeks ago, a young girl in Tamil Nadu, a teenager, committed suicide, and in her deathbed confession said that she is committing suicide because people tried to forcibly convert her to Christianity and she did not want to, so she took poison and she died. And when she was dying, for a brief period of time, while she was still uh, in a state where she could give her dying testimony or statement, she said that. Okay. And here is a clueless Manvi Attri saying that firstly, there are no forced conversions that are happening anywhere. It is absolutely bogey that we found in our report. What report? There is a video of a deathbed confession, and she's going on inventing a mythical report. Okay. So that is why and this is a person who's a speaker at this conference, India on the Brink. The next person I picked is an interesting person because she is the reason I picked her. She's a faculty in one of the US universities. And the reason I picked her is because she is promoting the caste narrative in America. Okay. She's at the forefront of this, upper caste and lower caste. And in America, there is a caste discrimination, all of that. We know, all of us know that the Equality Lab report is completely bogus. We are not saying that. The people who did the study from Carnegie Endowment said that that report is baseless. But people like Meena Kadasamy are promoting that narrative. So who is Meena Kadasamy? Here is what her ex-husband says. She said that Meena Kadasamy, I keep saying wrong names so that today. I don't know why. I
And it's
should
not
say
just today, Ajay bhai. You have been doing that
I
for a
say
while now.
wrong names all the time. I
Yeah,
butcher people's name and I apologize for that. I
yeah,
think it's because people butcher my name. I don't know. So
it could be.
I think you should correct me if I ever say wrong wrong pronunciations of name. Uh, Meena Kandasamy, uh, Meena Kandasamy's ex-husband, Dr. Dharmaraja. Uh, this is Meena Kandasamy's ex-husband saying that Kandasamy had faked her Dalit credentials to not only to the world but to her own. There's a misprint here, to her own husband. He said, however, as per official records, the mother of Kandasamy belonged to the forward community while her father was an OBC. Neither of them were Dalits, but she claimed that she was Dalit. And
So
then
I
he
think
goes
Ajay
on to
bhai,
say, let me just finish what she goes on to say. How do you then pretend yourself or misrepresent or allowed to be represented as a member of the scheduled castes, which are the Dalits? Are these to ensure that you could use their historical injustice as a shield to cover your armchair activities? Gunashekharan Dharmaraja asked his former wife as he exposed her blatant lies. Usada reminds me of one of the American politicians, which I don't want to bring up, but I just want to say that this is exploitation of Dalit suffering.
so this is not new. This has been happening in that space, especially outside India, for a long time. And because the thing is, if you look at this equality labs, they have given up all pretenses. They used to pretend that they used to represent Dalit before. Now they have given up all pretenses, and they are not even, the leadership is also not Dalit. None of them are Dalits. So the thing is that the reason this is happening is because in the West, it is not the facts that matter, it's the agenda that matters. And facts can go and take a hike and come back after a week, and they will be fine with it. The people who are driving the quote unquote caste agenda in America do not know the sea of caste or anything about it. They are driven by one single agenda, which is whatever can we can use to weaken India or Hindus in this space. This is a tool, and they are going to give the space to anybody. If tomorrow a Martian or somebody from another planet comes and says they are Dalit, and they represent the Dalit cause, they will be given a space too. You can put a baseball in the place of and call it a Dalit, and they will, provide that an agenda. This is how it works, Ajay bhai. And as you can see, I mean, if you're following what's happening around the world today, especially in Europe, 80% of the news that we read and see on media is 80% of it is propaganda. It is disinformation. So
Yeah.
we are just as much a victim of that, and just at a smaller
You
scale.
know, so I agree with you, but what is the most unfortunate part here is that people who are genuinely suffering are victimized again. And I will
They're
never
tools. They're being
claim,
used.
they're being used, right? I will never stand here and say, or sit here and say, that there is no discrimination in Indian society or any society. I would never say that there's not been historic wrongs that are committed, that have been committed on a class of people for whatever reason, whether it's on the basis of race, whether it's on the basis of jati, whether it's based on any of the other constructs that a society has come up with. There are differences because of economic reasons, because of birth, because of multiple reasons. And instead of focusing on how to correct these wrongs, people like Meena Kandasamy is out there exploiting and re-victimizing the people so that their career advances. And I think, you know, it
That's
is
correct.
really unfortunate that more people are not calling these people out for what they really are. And, if her husband had not come out and made the statement that he made, nobody would even know about it. Her ex-husband.
But what I fear, Ajay bhai, is that nobody still cares about it.
Yeah,
She will
that's
continue
because
to
nobody
represent.
has exposed this, right? This is a court filing that appeared in one website or a
But
Twitter.
that doesn't matter. Nobody will her not being anything that she is claiming to be, and facetiously representing a cause that she actually doesn't represent. It doesn't matter to the people. So to the Hatem Bazians of the world, okay, it doesn't matter what you are. All as long as you're willing to take up an agenda and push it, and that agenda leads to balkanization of India and destruction of Hindus. Hatem Bazian and his gang are perfectly fine with it. I mean, I'm using the name Hatem Bazian because he's the first one we discussed in among the command end of the movement. There are way many people behind it who I don't want to name because
Yeah.
you will be upset with it then.
I'll give out wrong names. I like what Indrani ji said, by the way. Indrani ji said that I'm just giving out wrong names so nobody will sue us. So thank you, Indrani ji. You're giving me a legal cover for mispronouncing people's names. So that I want to pivot because there are 50 speakers there and we can go on all day, right? But I came across this news item and I have not shared with you this item with you earlier. But there's a conflict going on in Ukraine, which is unfortunate. There's a Russia has invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is under attack. Their second biggest city has fallen. A lot of these things are happening, and India has
Their second
taken
biggest city hasn't fallen yet.
uh, it close to being. A couple of reports I read said that Russia has already entered the city and
They
all
have
that.
entered the city, but it hasn't fallen yet.
Oh, it hasn't fallen. Sorry. Thanks for correcting me. So in that, there are, from the Hindu/India perspective, globally, I think it is in India's interest and it's a Hindu interest to not, be. Of course, we should talk against violence and we should talk against illegal occupations and we should talk about war and why is it good to have peaceful resolutions, but a neutral stand till some of the major issues are sorted out is prudent. But here is a congressman who is never shy of taking anti-Hindu stand, who got elected with all the Hindu support in a constituency where an existing congressman was elected for at least 10 terms. And his name is Ro Khanna. So, Utsada, what did Ro Khanna say? Ro Khanna is disappointed. He is disappointed about a lot of things about India. He is disappointed that India stands for itself. He is disappointed that Hindus are expressing themselves. He is disappointed that Hindus have gained freedom after all these years, even though he claims that his grandfather was a freedom fighter. But here is what he says. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy stood with Indians against Chinese invasion. It is the US, not Russia, that will stand with India against China's current expansionist plan. He said that in a tweet. And then he said, this is the time for India to stand with the free world. Free word. That's what he wrote. Against Putin. Abstention is not acceptable. Now, I'm American citizen. I'm very patriotic, but I also want to remind Ro Khanna that all countries work in their self-interest. The same US did not stand by India in 1971 war. They actually sent the Seventh Fleet. So India has to look for its own self-interest, just as America has to look for its own self-interest. And for a congressman to pontificate and tell India what to do, and then provoke another congressman, Eric Swalwell, to make a statement. And now Eric Swalwell would have zero chance of winning in his constituency because I used to live there without Indian support. And he makes a statement saying, Representative Ro Khanna and I represent the largest Indian American districts, and this vote is contrary to what we hear from our constituents. Evidence, please. Indian Americans believe in territorial integrity and human rights. Yeah, okay. So, Sada, you know about Ro Khanna. What do you think?
First, I would like to say that Eric Swalwell should come clean about what exactly happened with the Chinese interns. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that too.
so is he trying to compensate for what he's facing in terms of his interaction with the Chinese intern who was a Chinese spy? Is he trying to make up for it? Is there some complex involved? So that's Eric Swalwell. In terms of Ro Khanna, I think Ro Khanna has been asked to make this statement by other powers that be because he's the flag bearer of the Samosa caucus, as they call it, the Indian American caucus. He's been like, hey Ro, you're an Indian, right? Yeah, just go and make a statement about this. And so he's making that statement. That's my understanding of it. He wants to look good. He wants to look good amongst his Democratic Party leadership, and he's made that statement. Now, as far as India's position on this is
So
concerned,
just a quick question. I not to divert you, but have you had that samosa? I heard it's very good.
I've never had that samosa. It's
You're
a
not
proverbial samosa. It doesn't exist. Uh, so
okay. All
so
right. So
yeah.
that's kind of sad. Okay.
So was
No
that the
samosa.
music to pay tribute to the Chinese who
Oh no
Eric
no, that
Swalwell
was
was
the
working
samosa
with?
music. It should have been this. Since you didn't have samosa. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So I lost my train of thought with all this.
What's that? Come on. You never lose your train of thought. You're
So,
always like, you.
my point is that when it comes to this particular issue, see, India, all India said, and there's, I don't know how much people care about this, how much Americans know about this, but there are, there are parts of Ukraine that suffered a lot in the last 8 years. The way it is being portrayed right now, as a country who loves to intervene in other parts of the world, I'm hearing stories like, oh, this is the first time war is happening in Europe. No. What did the US do in Serbia? They bombed them to the Stone Age in 1990s. That was very much in Europe. So, we have to be a little more careful. I understand Americans don't care about history and don't really care about the geography of the rest of the world much, but the world actually does care, and we only make ourselves look ridiculous in front of the world if we say these things. And so, coming back to Ukraine, I must say that there is a case to be made that parts of Ukraine, at least the eastern parts of Ukraine, at least the parts that are closer to the Russian border, that part east of the Dnieper River. So Ukraine basically divides into two parts. The western part is west of the Dnieper River, close to Poland and close to Romania and Moldova, and the eastern part is east of the Dnieper River, is close to Russia and Belarus on the top. And that part is very, very pro-Russian. That part has a strong population segment that wants to be part of Russia. And as an independent country over the last 8 9 years, I would be remiss in saying that that part was treated very badly by whoever was in power in Kiev. And in they talking or speaking of military violence and military attacks on civilian areas, actually Russia hasn't targeted civilian areas. They have taken losses of their own soldiers in this far so far in this 4 days of fighting to prevent civilians from dying in Kiev and in some of the other areas. They essentially took let their own soldiers die in to protect civilians, as far as I can see. You will not read this in CNN, you will not read this in MSNBC and the Western outlets, but this is, I believe that is there's some truth to it. And Russia is going to run out of patience eventually, and that this war can probably expand into a more brutal war. It can also be solved. I think they have made enough point. Russia has made enough incursions. They've taken up enough area in the 4 days that fighting has happened, that the entire eastern part of Ukraine that Russia really cares about, because they're the Russian speaking people they care about, they were badly treated, really brutally treated by the Ukrainian regime. Uh, those people have already been safeguarded. Russia has taken over those areas by now, and those areas are under Russian control. Uh,
So
Russia probably wanted to be further ahead in some of the places. The place where you said the second largest city, Ajay, where you said Russia, they went into that city somewhere around our midnight yesterday. They were making good progress, but then they ran into, and this is the problem with urban warfare. Uh, you may have the best soldiers, but if you're stuck between two buildings where there are women and children, and then somebody is firing from behind those women and children, if you really want to ensure that you don't look bad trying to kill civilians, you will have to withdraw. You will take losses and you will have to withdraw. So that's what happened in Kharkiv, as the Ukrainians call it, Kharkov as the Russians call it. They had to withdraw from Kharkov, and same with Kiev. The Russians didn't deploy heavy equipments. They didn't try to kill civilians. They were very careful. In return, they suffered losses. They deployed light equipments, tried to get into the city from the west end, and the Ukrainians blew up a bridge and trapped the Russians. And I think 20 or so Russians died yesterday trying to break out from the Antonov airport. So that is happening. But the point I'm trying to make here is that there is a reason why India has taken a more nuanced position, because unlike the Western propaganda that it's fine, democracy, peace, this and that, there is some case to be made about Russia's position as well. Now that doesn't mean that we go out and all the way support Ukraine, which support Putin, which India hasn't done. India has been very careful. India has called for peace. At the same time, India does recognize that there are concerns that Russians and Russian speaking people in Ukraine had genuine concerns. And trust me, America does that all the time. America has been hitting out at many places against India as well. And especially in the last 8 years since Prime Minister Modi has been in power, there have been the Eric Swalwells of the world have been running their mouth like crazy for real and perceived, mostly perceived grievances. So
yeah,
it goes both ways, and America has to realize that Europe is a weak power now. They need India, and India needs America. Both are good, powerful democracies that should work together. But it is not a one-way street. It is a two-way street.
yeah. So I agree with that. I also think that this kind of invasion is really not good. I think Russia should not have invaded Ukraine.
I
I
agree.
also
I
think that
agree.
there are a lot of ways of resolving the grievances related to joining of NATO, or the grievances about the ill treatment of Russian-speaking people on the eastern part of Ukraine. All that is fine, but to launch a full scale invasion and a war is really not ideal. It reeks of expansionism, and I think that there are better ways that it could have been resolved. Now, I understand the history between Ukraine and Russia, and how their common origin was and all of that, but to have a full armed invasion of another country in today's world is not something that people can just sit back and accept, because these are like dominoes. I mean, they this can lead to, if the world doesn't speak up, tomorrow you will see China invading Taiwan, and other such dominoes may fall. So we have to be careful in terms of even indirectly justifying this invasion. and I don't think India has done that. I don't think
I don't
I
think
would
none of
I
us can
would not do
justify
that.
this.
And I think when when you said that you to some extent you can understand and justify, I think you may understand, but I think you cannot justify it.
I'm not
And I think
justifying. I'm just not justifying the
but it
invasion,
sounded a
but
little bit like justifying.
I am understanding the concerns that they have, and the problem, Ajay bhai, here is that there are markers that could have been followed for a peaceful resolution. A very good marker would have been that there was an accord, there was a signed agreement that was made called the Minsk II Accords. It needs to be understood by everybody which side broke that accord, and some responsibility has to be given to that side. That here, you don't sign agreements and then break them. So that has to be understood. There has to be some understanding of that, and that some conversation needs to be had on that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings me to the Hindu good news of the week. Usada, tell us about the Hindu good news of the week. You're on mute again.
The Hindu good news of the week is a very happy news for the situation that we see in Ukraine. The Iskon temple in Kiev is helping stranded people. There are thousands of Indian students who live there in Ukraine and are stuck. In fact, there are news reports and video reports where they're claiming that many Indian students who are trying to go into Poland at the border with Poland are being pushed back by the Ukrainian police because they don't want them to leave, and because they are upset with India's neutral position on this issue. So that is another concern. So, but the good news here is that the Iskon temple in Kiev, Iskon has a Hindu community in Kiev, mostly Ukrainian, 60,000 of them. A lot of them practice are part of the Iskon movement. They are being given food, they are being given support, and that's very good news. I really hope that Kiev does not suffer any further in this fight. Most Ukrainians don't deserve this for what they are facing here.
Hey, Utsada, did you know? And this is something that Radha Raman Das ji has posted, and he has said that ISKCON has over 54 temples in Ukraine, and their devotees are committed to serve those in distress. There are some pictures of the food that they are providing to the devotees and other people, general people. But there are 54 ISKCON mandirs in Ukraine, and they're saying that please find nearest temple near you, and they're giving a link so that people can actually go visit the temple and get the food and other necessities from the temple. And you can see that food being served to the people at the Iskon Mandir. And that is that is Hindu Dharma at its best. Also, that I cannot thank people for Iskon for all the good work they've done, not just in Ukraine but around the world. I mean, they've always stood up for humanitarian causes, and they've endured quite a bit of ridicule for the way they've raised money or the way they're in public. They perform their bhajans and all of that. But look, this is the end result. They've never broken the law. In fact, Supreme Court endorsed that what they were doing was completely legal, and this is the end result of all the hard work and all the ridicule they endure. This is the end result of it. In a time of war, they are standing and they are providing the much needed service to everyone.
That's correct. That's correct. And I'm glad that Indian students there have a temple to go to and seek shelter in.
It's not just for Indian students.
For
They have
everyone.
opened it to everyone.
Yeah.
It's not just for Indian students.
That's true. I agree.
So once again, a good a good round of drum roll for ISKCON in Ukraine. And Utsada, then we come now to the next part of our program, and that is the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week. And here we go.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा
And so that once again, we will nominate ourselves, because again we did not do uh, we did not do a full fundraising uh, this gala towards the end of last year. And I think as you can see, that Hindu Pact does a lot of original research, and Hindu Pact does a lot of legislative outreach and other activities, and all of these things cost some money, and to garner the resources and all of that. So we would urge you to please go to hindupact.org and click on the donate button and make even a smallest contribution that, like, you can make, or the most contribution you can make, even if it's $5. You can do that. Even if it's $5 a month, it's just a cup of coffee, so that we can bring you Hindu Lounge and all the other activities that we are doing, the legislative efforts, our crusade against Hindu phobia. And crusade may be a bad word here to use, but crusade, I would still go, in a more generic sense, crusade against Hindu phobia, and all the other activities that we do. But so that I this is the amazing work that you do, and amazing work that Adele does, amazing work that everyone who is part of the team. We have half a dozen, more than half a dozen student interns that do. I mean, all of these things require resources, and I would urge everyone to just please go to hindupact.org, click on the donate button, and do the best you can. With that, Utsada, something that everyone generally is waiting for, and that is the Hindu Phobe of the Week. And we have a really, Utsada, I have not shown this to you yet, but I want to break this to you about the Hindu Phobe of the Week. It is something that happened only about less than 24 hours ago. So here we go with Hindu Phobe of the Week. So that if I can find it, here is the Hindu Phobe of the Week. And Hindu Phobe of the Week, Utsada, is this person from Tamil Nadu. His name is Tada, Tada, well, it's a nickname, Rahim. Uh, and Rahim, his name is J. Abdul Rahim, but people call him Tada Rahim. And so, why is Tada Rahim the Hindu Phobe of the Week? So, Utsada, I think people cannot quite read this, so I'm going to take this off. But then I'll talk about it a little bit. So, Tada Rahim, Utsada, is a person based in Tamil Nadu. This is the person who said that he would like to go in front of the Kanchi Shankar Mat. He wants to go because there's a dispute in Karnataka wearing hijab in government schools, where there is a dress code already in place. And we talked about it a little last week, where some of the girls went and said that they don't care for the dress code. They want to put hijab and go to school. And now this issue is in the courts. But Tada Rahim, or J. Abdul Rahim, uh, made a long Facebook post, and he said that he wants to go and protest in front of Kanchi Mat, founded by where Adi Shankara, was one of the people who was the founder of that, who and it's a seat of Advaita Vedanta in India. He wants to go there, and he wants to snatch the sacred threads of people who are wearing it. Okay, and so this person was arrested. Now, so that this is not an ordinary person. Tada Rahim, for those who don't know, is the head of Indian National League Party. That's not all. Okay, that is not all. Tada Rahim was also convicted of 1998 bomb blast that killed, listen to this, that killed 58 innocent people. He was convicted, he was jailed, and when he was jailed, he was let go after 18 years. Okay. This is the person who is a convicted terrorist. I don't even know why he was let out after 18 years.
because
After killing 58 people,
because in
to put
India
in,
there is courts, and they follow the procedures without actually evaluating the threats that the
yeah,
individuals posed after they come out. I think the name Tada also has the nickname Tada has a
Tada
meaning because
is
he
the law.
actually was in jail because of a law in India called Tada, which was against terrorism, and
Exactly.
that's why the nickname came in.
Hey, so that this is a picture of an ad that he took out in the newspaper in India, ironically called the Hindu, and where he put the picture of all the terrorists and he paid tribute to them. Now
Mhm.
this the Hindu posted it, and people called Hindu out on this. This is a few years ago, and one of the rarest of rare things, Utsada, Hindu actually withdrew, or this there's no way to withdraw a printed ad, but Hindu went out and printed a retraction saying that they made a mistake. Very hard to do that with Hindu, but this is the kind of guy who killed 58 people, injured and affected thousands of people, and now he's threatening Hindus again because he was left out.
Yep.
Indraji is suggesting that I should have a Shankhnad. Indraji, I'll find the sound and next time I'll do that. That's a great idea. Thank you. So, Sada, any thoughts on Tara Rahim?
Nope. And Ajay bhai, the article I see on the screen is the
Yeah, I'm going to turn it off. So, yeah, that was.
no,
And
Ajay bhai,
as
I
as
don't.
Makranji is pointing out that he was arrested by Chennai police. Yes, he is arrested. Yesterday he was arrested, and that news is now out that he has been arrested. But it's a
See,
poster child for Hindu hater.
yeah, that he is, and I think the fact that we see these individuals regularly every week who come out and say these things shows that for everyone you see out there, there are 10 times as many you don't see and who don't say it. So Hindus have to understand the level of hatred they have, that they will face if it was a free for all, and that's the society that is around them. So you know, keep that in mind, and act accordingly.
And with that, Utsada, unless you have any final thoughts, we come to the end of Hindu Lounge number 91. But, bef- yeah, go ahead.
I don't have any final thoughts except that hopefully you will go through the names we discussed, and you take the India on the Brink conference for what it is. It is a hate India and break India effort. Do not take it lightly. Just because the news cycle has not focused on it as of now, because of the events happening in other parts of the world, doesn't mean that that is not going to affect you. This is going to escalate from here, and you know, don't think that we are in a good place. We are going to be the target of such hate going forward.
Hey, Utsada, before we close the program, as always, we have a special tune created by a group, Decibels, just for this episode of Hindu Lounge. So please, everyone, stay tuned for next 3 minutes and listen to this amazing piece of music brought to you by Decibel, a tune created just for this episode of Hindu Lounge. So, with that, Utsada, I want to thank all our viewers on your behalf as well as mine for joining Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, and we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. Utsada, uh, I want to say one thing. Uh, you are going to be out next week, and you're going to Bharat after a long time. I want to wish you best of travels to Bharat. I know that you have a lot of things lined up, so you will not be here in next week's show, but we will have the show next week, um, and we will have uh, we'll have a substitute host. We don't know who it is going to be, but we will have a substitute host, and they will, for a period of 1 or 2 weeks, they will carry on your legacy, and then you'll be back. Any final thoughts on that before we go?
No, I hope you guys have a good Hindu lounge for the next 4 weeks. I will be back after that, next 4.5, 5 weeks, I think I should say. And I'll see you all in a month's time, and hopefully I'll have a good trip too.
All right.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully
Please.
you guys will miss me.
No, yeah, we will. No, so that we'll try really hard
we'll
not to
we'll
miss you.
try to miss me.
No, we'll try to miss you, but we're not sure. Oh, at least we'll report back saying that we missed you. How about that? That way
Yeah.
you
Hey,
don't feel
Ajay
bad.
bhai, we have this guy named Suthamali Ganga who comes and
Oh,
trolls
ignore him.
us.
I'm good. I don't even
he,
bother.
he comes and trolls us. So yeah,
Yeah,
hey guys, hey, carry on with your hate, Sudhamali.
exactly.
Yeah,
There's no place for hatred in
yeah,
Hindu
carry
heart.
on
There
with
is no
your hate.
hatred.
Carry on with
Hindus
your
don't
hate.
hate.
Yeah, I know you may not believe in karma, but we do. So
Yeah,
go,
exactly. All right.
keep doing
So
it.
that with that, here is the decibel music for the day.